Hello, everyone. I'm JeanClaude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this episode entitled The Cube Invasion with IndigoAngel. You can find her work at IndigoAngel here on YouTube and also on her Patreon at patreon.com/IndigoAngel. Indigo, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you, JeanClaude. It's a pleasure to be here as always and to dive into this topic today. I'm real excited to talk about it.
Well, very good. And let us know what's been going on here. I have had to reschedule this show 3-4 times already. You seem to be very busy as of late. What's going on in your life, man?
Well, for one, I've been bringing through a lot of extensive downloads. So if you check out my channel, my two most recent updates, I've really gotten into the depth of a lot of the occultism of these topics. And as I was explaining just a minute ago, as we were having our little chat before we jumped on, a lot of my work is definitely very authentic and original. And so I really have to go inward to bring this information forward. So sometimes that requires kind of taking a break from certain things and not exerting my energy, because I'm reserving that energy for me to be able to push forward with the things that I am seeing that I need to do. Also, I am working on a product line. So that's also taking up a lot of time. I didn't mention this before, but I am trying to create a starseed activation line through aromatherapy and essential oils. So I've actually been designing this for like a year, and it's a long time in the making. And I'm finally getting to the point that I can get my graphic design and my labels and my bottles ordered. So that in itself is a major project. And then also I am looking to relocate out of state, because I don't know if everyone's aware, but we're having such a huge migration going on in the United States, because particularly California and Denver are like the two major hotspots to live. And so the cost of living is really exponentially going up. So, a lot of people from California are moving to Colorado and Arizona. So these two markets are kind of getting flooded. So everyone, in these lower income brackets from Colorado and Arizona are moving like to Florida and Texas. So everyone's moving around. Our rental market is completely flooded, and it is very competitive right now. And it's just crazy. So, and I'm kind of in that boat. I'm kind of looking to relocate right now. So it's definitely been very time consuming to be house searching and doing all these things. So yeah, there's a lot going on in my linear world right now. My Gregorian calendar is full. Let me just tell you that.
Okay, very good. Going back to your product line, are you going to be putting this on IndigoAngel222.com, or are you creating a whole new website for that? Where's that going to reside?
I mean, ultimately, I would love to create a whole new website for it. I may start out with putting it on my website and then branch into creating a website for it. I'm definitely going to launch, marketing for it, and also incorporate it into a lot of my Starseed energy readings, because, that's what these Starseed activators are for, is for attuning to the celestial energy. So I've designed each one in accordance to what I've channeled from the star information and what I feel like which scents are going to activate people most accordingly to that radial energy signature. I'm also going to attune and infuse them with crystals, and probably include like little Stargate meditations with them as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's so exciting. I think I'll probably do Etsy, Shopify. I'm not too sure. Definitely, I think getting my own website at some point would be really good. And ultimately, I would love to market them in metaphysical stores nationwide. I mean, I really would like to launch it, because I feel that the Starseed community is like, if you go into metaphysical stores, they have certain, areas and branches of metaphysical, topics and subjects and areas that people can go, but there's not a lot of stuff for Starseed stuff. Right. So I really feel like it's a good time. It's a good opportunity to bring something forward for people.
Well, I love it. You're creating the new world that you want to live in step by step here. So that's amazing. So how many products do you think you're going to launch with initially? How many different potions are you going to put up?
Potions. I love it. I'm going to start with 6. I'm going to start with the 6 universal nations. So Lyran, Orion, Arcturian, Pleiadian, Sirian, and what's the other one?
That's okay.
There's one more.
I think it's good to start with. I mean, it gives a lot of choices to begin with, and people can identify to them. And I'm assuming on your product too, you'll have a little cheat sheet on how to identify which best matches your own frequency, like a little questionnaire or something. I don't know. It sounds exciting.
Yeah.
How far are you away from the launch?
I am probably like 2 months away.
Okay.
I'm hoping.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to go on and do all of the occult stars at some point as well. Like Hydra. Like I found out that as I've been studying, there's a hydrangea flower. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out what this essential oil smells like, because if it has a good smell, like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just finding particular essential oils. I would say the hardest one to put together so far has been Orion. Orion's been just difficult because I wanted it to be woodsy and grounding and clearing. So I've been messing with cedar and sage and fir and charcoal, and it's just finding the right combination. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll give them a try when you're ready. If you want a guinea pig, I'll
absolutely. I'll send you a free sample. Yeah.
And Sarah and the kids love all of that stuff too. So, they're into their little magics and creating potions and, cleansing the house and the meditation circle we have out back. So anything, along those lines, those guys are going to be all for it. So cool. Very cool. So folks, stay tuned for that. 2 months or so, Indigo will be ready here with her products, and we'll probably do a show about it when we're there.
Oh my gosh, so awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live. Today is an interactive show. Of course, we'll take your comments and questions as we go along here. But before we get into the topic of the day, of course, the title was the Cube Invasion. We wanted to share with you guys a bit of a warning, trigger warning. Some of this content might be difficult for some of you to hear. We are having a conversation, and we're hoping that at the end of this conversation, we have a little bit more knowledge to empower ourselves to take the decisions that are appropriate for our lives. Now, Indigo, how would you want to phrase that wording and that warning, seeing as you're going to be delivering this content here today?
I would say that this topic is definitely controversial. It does take us deep into the occultism. And so I just always encourage others to vet out the information themselves and to always trust their own gnosis. If they hold resistance to something that, that's an indicator that either maybe it's not aligning to you vibrationally, or there's just deeper research there for you, or maybe, it's just not ready to come into your energy field. And so it's just having discernment of what you do and don't ultimately want to allow into your consciousness. And again, just, vet the information out yourself, and just, if you don't, what's the word? Oh, I had something. I was going with something. Just hold discernment, and just ultimately,
Okay. Yeah. And at any time, if during the show you don't feel you resonate with the information, you can click off and go watch another show. Like, nobody's forcing you to watch this, or maybe just hold it on the back burner and come back to this episode later on. I think it's important to have the conversation, and growing up is not always smelling the roses. Sometimes we have to deal with other things that are in our reality in order for us to transmute that energy. And I think maybe this episode might be a step in that direction. Okay, so why don't I let you start laying down some track here, Indigo. Maybe take a few minutes to dive into the subject matter. I have another video that can show the audience here, which brings this into context, and I have a few questions lined up for you as well here. But I really want you to put your hands on the steering wheel here and really share with the audience how you've downloaded this information first, and let's get into the trajectory, I guess, of this learning curve that we're on.
Yeah, so I guess how I've kind of come into a lot of this information is I've just been really expanding into different aspects of my own consciousness. And so a lot of this really did come up when I was down in Mexico, and was working with a lot of the Mayan energy. I was really attuning to the consciousness of the Black Sun. So we're calling this topic the Black Cube Invasion. I feel like it's kind of maybe not the right topic, because my mission as an embodied galactic is to deconstruct demonization. So really break down falsehoods and just kind of reveal the unity or the wholeness in things. So when we're talking about the Black Cube, this really kind of in turn is a facet of the Black Sun. And so the Black Sun is equated to Saturn, or the sun of the ancient past, and it came forth as the Black Cube of Saturn, or satanic worship, or symbols for the Archon. And so, you know, it can really be kind of a dark, like, as I said before, a controversial topic. But really it is symbolism for man's limitations and restrictions and death and decay. So there's a lot of differing variations of this solar perspective. I do feel that it ties into Aryan occultism, which I feel that the Aryan occultism did ultimately demonize this symbolism. So as in all things throughout history, in terms of sacred books and information that's come forth, anything that's really demonized, it's ultimately demonized because there's deeper truths there, and there's things that they don't want you to know. And it kind of accounts or equivalates to a seal that is placed on consciousness collectively, and also within people's individual bioenergetic field, for them to not access these certain depths and levels of consciousness. So it definitely takes, you know, keeping an open perspective, keeping an open mind to kind of dive in to see, you know, what's really been covered up here. What do they not want you to know about, and what does it ultimately really mean? I think on a level of spiritual physics and spiritual science, because I think that's where the collective is ultimately evolving into, is this level of physics within spirituality, that we can kind of understand ultimately what the Black Sun represents. So we have these certain different facets of it that are demonized through Aryan occultism, but when you dive into the spiritual physics of the Black Sun, you see that it really ultimately represents multiple, or the dualistic spectrum of solar consciousness, right? And so it could mean the core of the sun, the core of the earth, the magnetic North Pole, and also ultimately the metagalactic core can be seen as the Black Sun as well. Yeah. Yeah. Does that kind of break it down? I'm trying to present it in a way that I'm not presenting it in a fearful way.
Right. And I appreciate that. I brought up this wiki page here too, just for the symbolism. People can understand what we're talking about. And also, I wanted to ask you, how do you tie in? Well, you said a lot there. So let me bring up this other slide here too. So this Black Cube in Mecca also. How do you tie in energetically the frequency here on what's on the screen between the Aryan occultism and what you're seeing as this duality between our sun, our galactic central sun, and how we have those reverse polarities? What are these people? When I say these people, what is humanity really pulling?
She says I'm excited rather than nervous. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to catch that, because I was telling you, I was nervous to kind of talk about this,
right.
Just because I feel like it is a sensitive thing, and it can be taken in so many different ways. And I feel like if it's not presented in a certain way, that people can be kind of harsh. So
right.
Yeah.
No, and I appreciate that, and that's the whole
Yeah.
point of us giving the warning and having this conversation,
Yeah.
and also thinking out loud. Even here, I'm trying to formulate a question, and as I'm doing that, I'm realizing maybe some words are not appropriate. So I'm trying to choose my frequency here as we talk about it too. Okay, let's go back to the Aryan occultism. Now, you've studied all of this in if you go back to some of the work from Ashiana Dean, the Voyager book series, and how there's different factions and different energies that are pulling basically humanity in a different direction. Let's start diving into that a little bit to share with the audience what you mean by all of this.
Absolutely. If you get into the Voyagers or any of the Christic teachings, which would be Lisa Renee as well, they also kind of demonize this perception of consciousness as well, because they place it as attached to the draconic collective. And so it is definitely tied into, I guess, the royal hierarchy of the Dracos, and that they themselves are called the Black Sun League. And so these are leagues that have taken upon a genetic disposition that disallows for ascension to occur past a certain capacity in one's level of perception. So meaning that it's capped at a 10th dimensional seal. So that means that those that are, I guess, a part of this Black solar consciousness in terms of their radial genetic, if that makes sense, their starseed origin, or that they themselves are not able to ascend past a certain capacity and are tied to negative agendas on this earth. Some of the things that I've been seeing psychically since I was in Egypt and Mexico, and I actually was visually seeing the Black Sun. So that was some of the videos that you had, and we both had seen from Gina Marie Cole. Is that her last name? Colton or Cole?
Yeah, let me bring her up here. Colvin Hill. So let me bring up that slide. We won't play it right now, but let me just bring it up so people see who we're talking about. So this individual on YouTube, and I recommend you go check out her work here. Let me bring down this link for the audience. But Gina Marie is cataloging quite a few aerial phenomena, just to call it that as a brush stroke here. And in this particular video, we see quite a few what appear to be flying cubes. And this is what originally triggered Indigo and I to do this show, because we were already talking about the Black Sun, the Black Cube, and all of this information that seems to be pressing down on humanity to kind of I guess make its way to the light, for lack of better words. And so I reached out to, just so you know, I reached out to Gina to see if she could come on this show. She has over 100,000 people following her on Facebook too. So maybe she didn't see my message, and hopefully we can get her on the show maybe as a follow-up to this one and have some of these discussions here as to how she's being guided to capture all of this as well. So I do recommend you guys go watch this video. I will be bringing in a few slides here just to share with you how that brings in the context to what we're talking about. So go ahead, Indigo.
Yeah, so she's been physically, capturing them on video, not only capturing the Black Sun at certain places down in the Yucatan, but also places over Mexico and over Egypt, where she's capturing multiple black cubes over the areas. And so it's just like you just said, it's exposing itself to make itself known as an existing consciousness here on the earth. And so however one wants to interpret that, I personally, what I see psychically when I tune into visibly seeing this is that there are particular Aryan egregores or seals that have been placed, like I said, within people's consciousness. And so I think that a lot of these programs are starting to dissolve. And so people are being able to see it for what it is, and which is that these are master race entrapments that have been placed in since the 19th century to prevent people from moving into evolutionary organic timelines. So a lot of these programs are starting to break down, and I think that's why it's being seen physically over Mexico for the last 6 months.
You just mentioned master race entrapments, and in our previous, I guess, discussion where you and I decided whether or not we were going to do this show, you were also talking about the connection between the bloodlines on the planet. And what's interesting there, I just did an interview with Elena Danan yesterday. She's the author of the book A Gift from the Stars, Alien Races. And this was part 3 of our book review. And here she's sharing with us a draft, mind you, of an org chart between some of these different layers, both on-world, off-world, that relate to this whole network of extraterrestrial forces that have an effect on humanity right now. And in her book, also in that same interview yesterday, let me bring that link down for the audience if they haven't seen that, we did get into this whole idea of the Rh negative bloodline and how those were manipulated, influenced for certain ET agendas, whether that's hybridization in some cases, and in other cases, what you just talked about now, this master race entrapment, where they're trying to prevent or put a gate on human evolution. So a lot of this has to do with bloodlines.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'll let you run the track here a little bit. What do you want to fill in terms of these bloodlines and how all of this seems to be connecting right now?
Well, some of the research that I've been getting into, I did just put out a United Kingdom grid update on my channel. And so what I've been tying into is where the draconic lines ultimately come into the bloodlines. And so in terms of the master race entrapment, so the Nazis, even if you get into Corey Good's work, he talks about the Nazis being the first bloodline or the first group of people that the Dracos made contact with. And so it definitely ties, the Dracos tie into the Germanic lines, and the Germanic lines tie into the royal bloodlines in the monarchy. And so because I think it goes back to George the First, a lot of the reigning monarchs, so they had like 100%, 50% Germanic ties in their bloodline. And so it ties in through the Germanic lines into the UK, it ties in through the Welsh, it ties in through the Anglo-Saxons, that the UK has been ultimately and fundamentally a highly charged Draco Stargate site and landmass vortex that really connects to this celestial energy. And so, yeah, it all really kind of ties into a lot of the Aryan occultism, and because there was a lot of contracts made between the Aryans and the monarchy, and a lot of that has to do with manipulation and seals and technology. Some of the things I've been seeing is that, well, there was actually something that Hitler was Queen Victoria's grandson. So he also ties in by bloodline as well. And so I think there are coalitions between star systems, and it's not just Draco. According to the grid update that I just did, it's also Pegasi, because I was going, according to the national animal and all of those things that I normally do. You've tried to break it down for me sometimes on some of your videos, like helping me explain it. But these radial intelligences carry particular information that help certain countries or a certain vortex site expand in that information. So between Draco and between Lyra and between Pegasi, which are the most current running radial templates in the UK, they carry a lot of information that has helped them be able to colonize and expand and create this technology that they're able to hold on to the reigning monarchy and keep that Rh negative in home court advantage. And so one of the things I've been seeing psychically is that there are these seals that are placed, and the United Kingdom has several seals that were placed by many reigning monarchies. And also seals that I do believe that they placed down in Antarctica to keep the pole from flipping. It's a prevention strategy, because if the pole flips, that RH negative will lose its home court advantage, and then it will be RH positive ruse. And so that kind of ties into what you were just saying, but that's just some of the things that I've been seeing. It's similarly to a J seal. So how all of these J seals were placed at the fall of Atlantis, I do feel that there's a completely entirely different set of seals that are actually placed on one of the most important dragon ley lines that run the 0 point field from Antarctica through the UK into the magnetic north. And they're manipulating that magnetic north pole from flipping. So that's some of the stuff I just talked about in my energy update.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty deep. And what was interesting too in the talk about the negative bloodline, basically, she didn't. So she's in communication after being abducted, being an experiencer, and what she's being told is that this negative bloodline is really negative. Not because she doesn't talk about rhesus RH factor in her book. She talks about this D protein, and I got confused when I first read it. I was like, what is she talking about, the D protein? And so essentially the information that she got was that this protein was added to our blood cells in order to make it easier to extract energy from these blood cells. And so this goes back to something I had downloaded a couple of years ago, where if you're negative for this protein, whether it's RH or D, whatever you want to call it, if you're negative, you can hold a higher charge. And so by holding a higher charge, the vessels that are RH negative are interesting to both sides. Not just the dark side, but also the light warrior, the light worker side as well, because these bodies can achieve higher frequencies and hold a higher charge, and therefore put more energy to whether that their mission might be, whether it's telepathy, psychic awareness, ESP, all of these things. And so on the planet, as you're discussing now, the people who are running the show, a lot of them are allegedly RH negative, and we see that, you know, a lot of people have done many subject matter research on this, and you can find their videos on YouTube. But what she was saying also is that the starseeds, which you are talking about, also are picking these bodies right now to have a better chance at fighting this I guess group. So again, there's many agendas here. It's very interesting that you brought that up, because I think, again, it's something that's pressing down into the field right now, and we need to figure out and once and for all put this to bed and understand not just who we are, but where we came from, who's manipulating us, and where we're going, and what our abilities truly really are if we weren't being so suppressed and compressed into this particular frequency gate that is propice in French, that is helping them continue this matrix of control. As you said, it's breaking down now. There's all of these energies from space that are hitting us. We have all of these cycles that are ending also. So we're coming to this critical juncture here. And maybe I'll have you guys together. It would be a great interview to get more into the bloodline thing too, because for her and also Goshia from Cosmic Agencies, we both got into this topic of the bloodlines. And it's funny because here in North America, nobody cares about your blood type. Whereas if you go to China and other places, your blood type means a hell of a lot in terms of what kind of jobs or position in life you're going to get. So there's something there. There's something there. Anything else you wanted to add on the bloodlines before we move to maybe another aspect of this?
No, that's definitely interesting what you just said about in other countries, how it actually matters in terms of jobs you get and things like that. But here it's not even recognized. That's interesting. Yeah.
A lot of people I talk to are like, oh, I don't know what my blood type is. I'm like, wow, okay. It's interesting that you don't even want to know what your blood type is. Okay. So it just goes to show you how, obfuscated we are from the reality of what's truly important. Instead, we absolutely know what the mainstream propaganda, fashion and all this stuff wants us to believe is important, but the really important stuff is always, behind the screen and nobody talks about it. Okay.
I guess in terms of, I'm kind of going back to the Black Sun, but
yep.
I do feel that it was demonized through the Aryan occultists and through this symbolism. But ultimately, it's actually the centralization of power. And so they don't want people to actually really tune into this, because it takes you into the alignment of the magnetic North Pole. It takes you into a deeper level of the silicate matrix internally. It takes you into the frequency of the metagalactic core, which is where and what needs to be accessed ultimately for deeper understanding of universal systems and how things actually energetically work. And so as long as we can keep humanity off the path of aligning on a galactic scale and to the totality of what they truly resonate with in terms of galactic harmonization, galactic time, that they're unable to fully manifest and really operate in accordance to the most organic grid on this earth. And so it's, it's all diversion tactics at the end of the day. And so, yeah, it's
okay. Let's start asking the audience here if they have questions, because I know Indigo and I are kind of choosing our words, and this may be just part one of what might eventually be 2 or 3 episodes on this particular topic. And I think we're taking our time here to maybe just couch this discussion first, and I think this is what we're doing here. I think Indigo and I are being guided to do this episode in this particular manner. So if you guys have questions for either myself or Indigo, please now populate them in the chat and put them in high caps. It really helps me see them and bring them on the screen for you guys. And so while we wait for that, Indigo, going back to these cubes that we're seeing and that people are capturing in the sky, and there's quite a few. Mr. MBB 333 also did something a couple of months ago, and I forgot to bring up the clip here for the episode. But what do you make of this critical time period that we're in now, and why some of this is being shown to us? And the reason I'm asking that is because there's people who are watching this show who maybe's mission is to really look at this and to transmute this information and to educate the public. So I want to give them a little bit of a teaser as to why maybe they're going to be triggered by this information, and maybe what to do and how to run with that ball, if that makes any sense.
Well, everybody's kind of on a different timeline in terms of their ascension and how they're perceiving things. I think collectively, it's the process of unifying consciousness. It's the process of understanding that solar bodies are dualistic in nature, and there's a positive and a negative to solar consciousness, and that it doesn't necessarily mean negative or bad, but it's the unconscious or it's the unseen. And so I think this is coming up for people to start accessing the collective unconscious, and to be able to start bringing up what's in our unconsciousness, because it's really important for global transformation. There was a quote by Carl Jung that said that, as we get further into the new age, the organic consciousness or the natural consciousness is being subdued to the unconscious. So it's cycling back up so we can bring the unconscious back to the forefront of our consciousness. Ultimately, the Black Sun really means the black matter state, or going into the eternal laws. And so in order for us to unify, we have to kind of move past universal laws, because all of that duality and polarity is held within universal laws. And we have to get back to the eternal laws. And that's kind of happening as we transition, I feel, out of the Aryan occultism timelines, out of the Aryan subrace or root race, and go into the Aryan subraces, which are taking us into the 6th root race, into the 7th root race, into the 6th age of consciousness. And so it's just the process of evolution. yeah, it's rebirthing a new world, and we're all having to see through the spiritual physics of these things through the helium spectrum emissions, because you know how we did the solar attunement on the Patreon, how we were attuning our consciousness, and how I said it's important to do this at 3 different times of day, because you're getting solar consciousness integration at 3 different helium spectrums. And so it's the same thing at night, that 24-hour cycle. You're getting a different spectrum of solar consciousness, because I mean, even if you look at the Egyptian beliefs of solar consciousness, they believed that the sun was life and the sun was also death. You know, Ra himself was bound to the material sun, but then if you dive into the actual Egyptian funerary text, they talk about the dark sun and how it was necessary through different times of life and experiences, and through the death processes and through the dematerialization processes, that you came to understood the black sun as well. And so, yeah, it's a process of unifying our consciousness and deconstructing demonization. I think that's what's falling away, is the constant demonization of things.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Sorry. Am I rambling?
No. I got all that, but I think I need to watch it one more time to get the gist of everything you were saying there. Because every time you speak, you get this first level, and then if you really pay attention, there's this whole subtext of code that you're transmitting. So I'll have to listen to that again myself. The Serbian Mike is asking, do you think that Maria Orsic did in fact contact the beings from Aldebaran, or rather, he says that Aldebaran contacted her? Did you study this field of information at all? Do you understand?
Who's Maria Orsic? Was she connected to the Nazis?
Yes. So she was part of the Tool Society. They were basically psychic mediums, and they were engaged or appropriated by high society at first, before the war efforts, to try to download information that would help bring new technological supremacy to this group that had hired them. And eventually this fell into the hands of the Nazis, and the space program kind of went from there.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that that's where they received the technology for the Nazi bell, which was, I think it was like a time machine.
The Glocka?
And so I feel there's a lot of information that they received from Aldebaran, and I also feel that's why the Nazis actually felt that they were the face of the Aryan race, is because they were actually given origination documentation from the fall of Atlantis of their origins, and so they felt that they were the descendants of the Atlanteans. And I do feel that this information did come from Aldebaran, and so I think that ultimately was Hitler's quest, was to prove that they were the Aryan race. And that's why I said master-slave entrapment races, because that's where this, I guess, hierarchy belief came from, was that they were entitled to this because they were the descendants of the Atlanteans. They felt that they were in the, like you said, I think it came from the channeling of Maria, or however they were connecting to Aldebaran, but it was definitely, and it's interesting because it just, again, shows the duality of particular systems, because when you look into Aldebaran, this is one of the 4 royal stars. This is the Archangel Michael collective. This is where the Blu-ray star seeds come from. Why is it that we have such were they invaded by Draco? I mean, is this where this is coming from? So there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of mysteries to all this. And this is why the research can take you down wormholes upon wormholes, because you're trying to make the connections.
Right. Okay, very good. Tom Vickers, question for Indigo. Are they, I'm assuming here is a generalized term of ET, hunting for bloodline DNA group? And if so, which?
Is who specifically hunting for?
Yeah, Tom, maybe rephrase that question and give us a little bit more precision. And while you do that, I'll try to scan for your question again here. I'm holding up the chat right now to answer these questions in order. But on the subject of blood, of course, this Nike disaster. I don't know if you saw this recently, Indigo, but they came out with this running shoe that includes human blood. So you can see that in the sole.
Oh my gosh, that
And
is
they
crazy.
got so much backlash for doing this. And of course, there's a big pentagram on it. It's just like, again,
That's vampiric. Wow.
but again, they're bringing that in your face right now. All of these energies, as you're saying here, they're triggering for a lot of people, but it's coming up for a reason. And I believe it's coming up because we have this opportunity perhaps to collapse this duality. And in order to do that, you need to see both sides of I guess, the matrix as it's being presented to us. So here it's absolutely in your face. You can't miss it. And anyways, that was a crazy story. So let me go back to the chat here and see if I can find.
That is really crazy. It's almost trying to normalize Satanism.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other show. The whole yeah, I had like 10 things I could say there, but it's going to be even more triggering to folks. Okay, Ariel is asking, any tips for the newly activated starseeds who are having trouble developing their gifts? This is a great question.
Definitely. It just depends kind of where you're at in terms of that development. Some people really do need visuals to be able to see into the higher chakras, into the causal chakras. So, of course, doing specific meditations that can probably help you to understand those realms, because it's all about understanding how to interdimensionally navigate. And I have some really good tips and tricks for that on my Patreon as well. But I can just give you some of them. So one of the things that really helped me was I got 13 flashcards. And what I did was every single week, I would take a week and I would go through an activation, a meditation, an invocation for each dimensional realm within myself. And so I'd start with the first dimension, or the root chakra. I would invoke this, set an altar for this, meditate just for root chakra meditations. And then what you do is you allow your consciousness to bring forth the information. So what realities do you see as you invoke this? How do you relate to your own personality as you invoke this? What angels have come forth? What ETs have come forth? What type of live electrical energy hits do you feel? What type of crystals do you feel called to when you've invoked this? And then you write everything down on your card, right? And so you've just kind of built that realm, or that dimension, or that interdimensional perspective. And you go through that all through the 13 chakras, because you want to expand beyond the physical body, because this is how you open the causal and access the spiritual kingdom, the angelic realms. And so that for me was just, I still use those cards to this day. Just to like, how do I see things again? Oh yeah. So I think that's a good tool for developing yourself internally. And also getting the vibration up in the body, because the higher you can get the vibration, the easier it is to attune to these ultra frequencies. Because as a starseed, these are radial templates. These are the highest ultra spectrum of light. Okay, so you can't access those if your vibration is low. If you have a lot of density in the body, if you have a lot of trauma, if you have a lot of weight holding you down. So you have to release that before you can start accessing those higher frequencies.
Okay, so that's very good. What specific package here on Patreon can one access some of this information you just talked about in terms of empowering them and starting on this awakening process, in terms of getting tips and tools to maybe find and activate their gifts? Which one would you recommend here?
All of them are good. You will get full access to all of my videos by doing the lowest package. The next one up would be if you wanted a Starseed origin reading, I do include that with the next package up. And then also with my most expensive package, which in US dollars is $44.44. It does include 1 hour interactive attunements with me. So we just kind of start with where you're at, whether that's just getting the fundamentals and the basics, or going into working on skills for telepathy, working on skills for remote viewing, working on skills for grid scanning, working on skills for Stargate attunements, or protection visualizations. It's all about visualizing, because it's actually the #1 thing that you can do to open your psychic gifts. So a lot of people are, I need to decalcify my pineal. Okay, that's great. Don't drink fluoride water, do all the extra things.
Right.
But visualizing, according to spiritual sciences, things that have been studied, it's been proven that visualizing and programming your own subconscious is what actually allows you to be able to achieve all of these things.
Yeah, that's very good. And for those who want to maybe kick it up a notch and understand a little bit more how to read Celestial Akashic Starseed's origin, you can get this book from Indigo, and this is on her website at indigo222.com. Let me bring that link down here as well. So Indigo, for those who are interested in being a little bit more hands-on, explain to them what's in this book for them and why it might be appropriate for them to start reading this information.
Yes. So this book that I wrote, I published it in 2019 now. I go into what it means to be a starseed, and I talk about how to break down the charts. So I kind of give my methodology for others to be able to translate charts, regular Western or sidereal charts, into their starseed origins. So I give the celestial markers for people to either decode their own charts or do charts for other people. But I break down the meaning of a starseed, the qualities, and also all of the different origins. So I think I have about 13 definitions according to the 6 universal nations, and then also other occult nations that I've included in the book. But I feel this book is definitely a work in progress. I'm ready to upgrade it and put more information in it, because I have so much more that I've come across since I wrote it. But yeah, it's definitely my perspective of it. I definitely attune more to the lunar consciousness of things. When I wrote this book, I see solar perspectives and lunar perspectives, but I feel that this book is kind of a merge between both worlds.
Okay.
And that's why it's called the Lunar Edition, is I do like to pull my starseed markers according to the lunar nakshatras, which incorporates 27 celestial markers of origins, and it includes all of the 6 universal nations. And so that's my methodology for the book.
Very good. And of course, you know, in each of these little chapters here, you get into the definitions of these, like, for example, the Pleiadian starseeds, the Antares starseeds, and all that. So if you guys are interested in the information, please check out the book. And at this price, it's really worth it. Give it a try. So that's IndigoAngel222.com. Of course, the links are in the description box below. Okay, so let me go back to our questions here and see if there's anything else. Okay, Mike says, thank you. Maria Archik was Taigetan woman. Yeah, potentially. I heard that information also coming from the Taigetan team on the Cosmic Agency YouTube channel. So there seems to be some time traveling components to all of this as well. So that's, you know, maybe more research is needed there to get into all of those details, but it is coming up to the surface right now. So very interesting you say that. Ariel, do the bad guys still have the time tech? Oh, as we're talking about time travel, or is it come back to good hands, or has it come back to good hands? Okay, so are they in control of maybe these timelines, or are the good guys now back in charge of manipulating our timeline to a higher, better reality for humanity, I guess is the question. That's how I'm interpreting it.
I feel like it's always back and forth. It's always back and forth, to be honest. And I kind of equate that to just the cosmology of our universal structure. I mean, this universal system that we all chose to incarnate into is a polarized system. So it's just an astrological cycle of ascension and descension that that we're kind of maneuvering through. But like as we expand into higher consciousness, we're holding the higher frequencies, and that we don't have to exist in duality, but these realities and these planes are still playing out in multiple dimensions that are existing on this earth. It's not just 3D and 5D, it's 12D, 13D here. And so that duality exists on all of those dimensional planes. And so I do feel that there is a force of galactics, the universal nations, that don't ultimately allow the downfall of humanity to transpire, that the universe does truly thrive to provide what is best for the whole of humanity. And so even the negative forces, even the dark agendas, they on some level do serve a purpose here. A lot of this is about growth. We are here to grow, and sometimes we can't grow without resistance. I mean, you can just kind of look at this in terms of nations and countries, like why America is such a thriving nation in a lot of ways. It's a lot of people like America. Many people want to leave their country and come to America, right? Mm-hmm. It's because we kind of are a polarized nation. We have the right and the left, and that's our consciousness here. But that polarization is what pushes us to thrust forward and to grow in a lot of ways. So, I mean, it's using what we have to our advantage and making the best out of things, and, just seeing it in terms of striving forward, I guess.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah. Okay. That's really good. That makes sense. So I guess the last question, and we'll give it to John here. It relates to the subject matter for today's episode as well. So is the black sun the second sun of our binary? It's also known, is the black sun, the second sun of our binary, it's also known as invisible sun. Will it be seen by many soon? So do you equate this binary system to the black sun you're discussing here now, or no, Indigo? How would you answer that?
I'm just trying to think. I feel that the black sun is like the first sun, and that the solar sun that we have here is dependent upon the black sun, that the black sun represents the eternal life and the solar sun represents the material life. And it has to do with dark matter and black matter as well, that the emissions from the black sun or the dark matter templates, right? Because even if you think about the metagalactic core, like we see this as a black hole, right? Mm-hmm. That this is that our solar sun is actually breaking down dark matter axioms and transmuting that into photons. So they are dependent upon one another, I feel, and that it is a synergistic relationship. And there's just so many different ways that you can see the distinction between the two suns.
And the second part of his question is, do you believe it's going to become in view of most humans soon? Because all of this is occulted to us now. So is there a timing to all of this? Is there a celestial event to all of this? Is it just a matter of consciousness? How would you answer that question?
Well, time doesn't exist. All is simultaneously existing now. It already has occurred. So it's just a process of evolution, essentially, I feel. Okay. Yeah, it's just allowing it to integrate into our consciousness and to expand. I don't like to say like put a timeline on things or like make a prediction on something. I feel like it's kind of misleading in some way,
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And of course, there's a lot of people out here in the last year predicting timelines and dates and all that, and they've all come and gone. And I wouldn't want to be in that shoe of predicting and using dates and times. Seems to be not a worthwhile endeavor, but the concept of having the conversations, of course, and trying to explain to people what's coming down and what energies are being transformed right now, that is a valuable question or a valuable conversation, and that's the one we're having here today. So I think we should probably start winding this down. I think we did a good job at least opening this conversation on the Black Sun, and perhaps you and I will feel guided when it's time or appropriate to maybe go a little bit deeper into all the meanings that we wanted to touch that relate to this, and how some in the audience might be triggered into activating themselves to work on some of these different components that need to be integrated here in our collective. So you and I can sleep on it a little bit. So Indigo, is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience here before we leave for today? Anything else?
No, I think you kind of just really nailed it. Like, there is so much here. There's so much more. And like you said, it could really be a few shows to kind of dive into this topic, but I think we kind of just roundabout brought some things into the awareness. And so I definitely would be interested in bringing more of this forward, because the Black Sun has been coming to me honestly over the last year. I keep kind of making videos about it here and there when it kind of comes back up. So I'm like, why does this keep coming back into my consciousness so much, so often, and keep coming back to that? And like I said, I really feel like it's about accessing the eternal laws, accessing the dark matter. 85% of our cosmos is dark matter. So this is a huge integrative part of our consciousness. And, we focus on the light, we focus on the solar aspects, we focus on all these different parts of spirituality. But if this is 85% of the universal structure, we're missing a big piece of the information here. Right. So, and it's all connected, and yeah, I would love to break this down some more in the future.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone in the chat. Jenny says, thank you, JC and Indigo, for this conversation. Very helpful. Well, thank you. And William says, thank you, Indigo. You got a lot of love in the chat, Indigo.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here and talk with everyone today.
Absolutely. So, of course, you can find Indigo's work at IndigoAngel222.com. You can also find her on YouTube at IndigoAngel. And go please subscribe. Like, we need to bring up those numbers.
Come on over. I'm going into it all the time.
Absolutely. And she's quite prolific in the last couple of weeks here, man. There's a lot of content. I can barely keep up with everything you're putting out, Indigo. So, guys, go check it out and have this conversation with Indigo on her YouTube channel. And, of course, you can find more of these empowering tools, tips, and tricks to find and discover your spiritual superpowers and to develop them here on Indigo's Patreon panel at patreon.com/IndigoAngel. And last but not least, please remember to like, share, and subscribe here. If you like this kind of content, please do encourage me and to create more. And you can do so also by sharing this content with other people and commenting below and starting this conversation with us here on YouTube. I really appreciate that. Now, coming up in the next week or so, there's 2 or 3 shows I want to bring your attention to. This next one here, Parasite Purge with Jenny Moonstone, that's going to be scheduled for Thursday, April 8th at 3:15 p.m. Interesting start time. And we're going to get into some of the topics that relate to the conversation today, actually. So there's a tie-in between both of these episodes. So if you guys want to dive in a little bit deeper with us, please join us for that episode. It will be worth your while. Also, in this context of this simulated reality or duality that we're in now, this is part 2 of a show that Solretta and I started last week, I believe, and we're going to dive in even deeper on this particular episode. And this is Friday, April 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss that. And finally, this one I'm excited about. This is a new weekly show with Elena Denon and myself. We're going to entitle it Where No Woo Has Gone Before. So we're going to go deep in a lot of these subject matters. And what's cool here, we're going to have this conversation between the contactee, the experiencer, and a whole lot of woo. So there'll be a whole lot of woo going on. So anyways, don't miss that. The season premiere of that will be Monday, April 12th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So that's about it, folks, for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on on this beautiful day, kind of sunny day outside here. And thank you again, Indigo, for being here and sharing all of this. I know you were a little bit nervous to get into this topic here today, but judging from the audience here, we have a great audience, and I think they're on track with us. They're following where we're going, and they're opening their minds to the idea that there's still, even though we want to stay positive and bring our frequencies up, there are still some things that we need to work on to transmute on this planet in order for every one of us to rise to a higher consciousness. And so this episode is one more step in that direction today. So thank you again, Indigo, for your bravery and for all of your knowledge and for sharing that with the Beyond Mystic audience here today. Thank you, Indigo.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I'm JeanClaude at Beyond Mystic. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Bye.